This is not a tutorial. I'm not an electrician, I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know what I like. When it comes to recording and mixing, my tastes are somewhat archaic. I love new sounds as well, but as someone raised on the music of the 60s and 70s, especially the Beatles, they've always been the gold standard for me when it comes to sound. In an effort to capture some of that magic, I've grown somewhat obsessive when it comes to vintage gear. I can go on and on about old instruments, consoles, preamps, and compressors, but the U47 has haunted me as the missing piece of the vocal sound that shaped my childhood. That's when I came across Jim Lill's video called Where Does Tone Come From in a Microphone? This is one of my favorite videos on the entire website. I even encourage you to watch and come back to this video because I'm about to spoil it. But one of the big conclusions Jim makes is that the capsule of the microphone, the part actually turning physical vibration into current, is responsible for the majority of the sound. At the end, he gets a capsule similar to the one found in the legendary Elam 251, places it inside a soda can with a wire mesh grill and the circuit from some other super cheap mic, and gets it to sound nearly identical to the 251. Then, I remember this old 80K tube mic my dad gave me. I knew that it sounded terrible, but it had a working tube circuit in it, and it came with this padded briefcase with a slot cut out for it that was suspiciously U47 shaped. After doing some research, I found a suitable capsule modeled after the original for under $300. But now, a word from my sponsor. Nobody. I emailed a bunch of companies and wrote long dedicated pitches for each one and didn't get a single response back. I think I just don't have enough of an audience yet to get a real sponsor, so fuck it, I'll do it myself. I'm this video sponsor. I just released my debut album, The Magician, and I really think it's something special. It's got a lot going on, from sea shanties to big band jazz to rock and roll. And I've never worked so hard on anything in my life, and I really want people to hear it. I even recorded vocals with the mic I'm making in this video on the song Happy Now. If you like the music of Pink Floyd, Queen, David Bowie, the Beatles, etc., I think you'll like The Magician, out now on all platforms. Now, if all I cared about was the sound, I could just solder the new capsule into here and save myself what would become a huge headache. But the distinctive shape of the U47 isn't just functional, it's iconic. Growing up and seeing pictures of it next to my favorite artist burned its silhouette into my mind as a symbol of greatness. If I was going to build my own, I wanted one that was both close in sound and spirit. One that I could set in front of me and feel like I'm stepping into the shoes of my idols. So I spent $100 on a housing that looked like the real thing, which meant taking the circuit out of the 80K chassis. The circuit is soldered to the terminals on the XLR connector, so in order to take out the circuit, I would have to take out the connector as well. That's when I ran into problem number one. I've been trying to remove this 7-pin XLR connector, and I haven't been able to figure out how to get it out, because you can see there's a tiny little screw in there. So I kept trying to unscrew it with all my force, and it still wouldn't come out, to the point where I bought another 7-pin connector, and I thought I'd have to resolder all of the connections. So it turns out it's not exactly lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. If you turn it to the left, it does pull the screw out, but pulling the screw out is actually how you get the thing to tighten. So now I think I'm going to keep all the soldered connections that are in the bottom of this one and save myself soldering 7 connections. Since I couldn't remove the XLR connector from the bottom without desoldering it, I began disassembling the mic so that I could remove it all at once from the top, with the connector still connected to the circuit. With the circuit free from the chassis, I tried pushing the connector through the hole. It wouldn't budge. But then my lovely girlfriend Amelia decided to give me one of my Christmas presents early, which was this headlamp. Turning it on, I was able to actually see the issue, which is that one of the soldering pins has too much excess solder on it and is getting in the way of me being able to take out the 7-pin connector.
Could never be you.
I don't think my soldering's any better. I tried pushing the blob out of the way, and then desoldered it until it wasn't blocking the passage anymore, but it still wouldn't budge.
No, I'm not so sure if that's the issue or not.
Thus, we had problem number 2.
Oh no. Oh no, it's not the problem. Because now what could it be?
The connector was just not going to come out, and I accepted that I would have to resolder the circuit into the new 7-pin. That meant desoldering it from its apprehender. I took note of the terminals the capsule was connected to before desoldering it, so I could fully remove everything but the XLR connector. I then took note of which cable was connected to each terminal, even writing it down, and then began removing the heat shrink tubes. I then carefully desoldered each wire from the connector, and was able to successfully remove it before spotting why it was stuck. There was a literal barrier preventing it from coming out through the top, which was very annoying. I then ensured all the cables were ready to be resoldered, biting off the insulation, preparing the shrink wrap tubes, and fitting them over the wire before soldering. I had noticed that one of the pins had also been soldered to the middle, I assume for grounding purposes, so I cut a small piece of wire to connect those pins as well. In later shots, you'll see that I forgot to also solder this middle pin to the piece over here that connects to the screw. This is how the circuit grounds to the body of the microphone itself, not just the XLR connector. I later soldered this connection off camera and got a less noisy signal. It is at this moment that I caused problem number 3. I accidentally rest the iron on the plastic part of the connector, immediately melting through it. The worst part is that I don't even realize and then do it again, deforming it even more. My room smelling like burnt plastic was the least of my worries because now I knew that the deformed part would block the connector from fitting in this time, so I finished soldering all the wires and secured the connections with heat shrink. I then got to work shaving away at the offending area with an X-Acto knife, trying to fit it through to no avail. Then I tried grinding it down, which was working pretty well. I didn't have a file, but this worked good enough. And finally I got it to slot in. Problem number 3 solved. At some point in the middle of this, I decided to make sure that my new capsule would mount into the new chassis. I tried screwing in the screw that would connect to the capsule, but discovered problem number 4. The hole was not big enough. I decided to try widening the hole with a screwdriver, which was not working at first, but after a few minutes of drilling, the screw finally popped through. This was such a victory, because I didn't expect that to work, but problem 4 was solved. It was then time to connect the capsule, where I ran into problem number 5. Designed for a much smaller mic, the circuit was too far away from the capsule to reach. This was a simple fix though. I just cut some extension wires, soldered them to the circuit, and connected those to the capsule wires. I also made sure to put the heat shrink tubes on before soldering, which I'm proud of. With the capsule hooked up, the internals were now complete, so I resecured the tube, ensured the chassis would fit over the internals, and secured everything in place with zip ties, as the new chassis was not designed for this specific circuit. Then came the scariest part of the build. Condenser capsules are very, very delicate. This one's made out of a thin film of PVC and gold, stretched to tension. The film is 6 microns thick, and for reference, a sheet of paper is 100 microns. One mistake and the most important part of the build is gone. Having trouble removing it from the case, I carefully pried it out using a screwdriver. It screwed in from below, but with the circuit in place, I couldn't get the screwdriver to tighten it all the way. I decided to buy a right angle screwdriver, but tighten it the best I could in the meantime. And with that, it was finally time to close it up. Now some of you will recognize 2 glaring mistakes I made during that process that ensured this would not be the last time closing up the mic. But that was a problem for later. It was time to test the mic. I can't describe the intensity of this moment for me. You guys see a very edited version of this project, but for me, this represented weeks of research, months of saving up for parts, and a ton of stressful tinkering, all leading up to this single moment.
Check, 1, 2.
No signal. But then...
1, 2, check. Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2.
Although I was getting a signal, it still wasn't clear whether it would be usable or completely distorted. Until...
Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. I fucking did it. I made this fucking mic. It works. It works. Yes! Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars.
The capsule was on backwards.
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars.
Now all of this was just 5 minutes before a scheduled recording session with a client of mine, the wonderful Carmen Costello. We decided to try it out during the session, and it went beautifully. The song is out now.
I've been given love I've never dreamed of finding.
So I began editing the footage, but then... I purchased some automotive heat insulation which came with these gloves, which I would later find out are great for opening stubborn jars, and some metal zip ties. But as I went to unscrew it, I heard something rattling inside the mic. I present to you problem number 7. Miraculously, the capsule was undamaged, but I had a new problem. How would I remove the housing without damaging the capsule? After sitting there in silence for a few minutes trying to get over my shock, I decided to put the capsule in its shipping container before lifting the chassis over it. I then made sure the capsule was at the right orientation and screwed it properly with a right-angle screwdriver. I then removed the old zip ties, which thankfully had not melted, and freed the tube to wrap with insulation. I decided to secure the tube to the top, which filled the awkward empty space, and got it further away from the circuit, and made it look more like the real thing. Then, for the last time, I closed up the mic. Until I realized I was missing a screw. I then remembered that the chassis came with extra screws in a little bag, whereas if by fate, I discovered that it came with little stickers for the pickup pattern selector. Now my mic only has a cardioid circuit, so the pattern selector is redundant, but it's a small detail that makes it look more like the original, so I'm super happy about it. So I removed the head basket to install the sticker when I realized I'd placed the entire chassis at the wrong angle, and the capsule was pointing sideways. So I opened it up again, placed the sticker on, screwed on the head basket, and for the last and final time, closed up the mic.
Check, check. 1, 2. This is me speaking into the front of the microphone. This is me speaking into the back of the microphone.
But one thing was still missing, the metal badge on the front. Since the actual badges are rare and expensive, I decided to get one that was a little more tailored to myself. Technically, the RM stands for replica microphones, but we all know what it really stands for. I could have just called it done at this point, but the mic had a suspiciously low output volume, which made the circuit's self-noise creep into the background of low-volume recordings. I began to think that it might have something to do with this terminal on the capsule, which I had ignored. After doing some research, I found that this is a terminal for the backplate voltage, which I had been starving my capsule of. Problem number 9. This is why non-tube condensers require phantom power from their preamps. In this case, I had to redirect voltage from the power supply to the capsule, but where would that voltage come from? The original capsule had only 2 wires connected to it, and I had already wired the new capsule in the same way. Or so I thought. Looking at the old capsule, I realized that only one wire was actually connected to the capsule, and the yellow one was supplying the plate voltage. This is because the original circuit is cardioid only, so it only needed a single wire coming out of one side of the capsule, so I had accidentally been sending my plate voltage down the signal wire and into the capsule. Luckily this didn't destroy it, but I knew I had to fix it. So I opened it up, secured the mic, and wired this black cable to the plate voltage terminal on the circuit. I then cut the previous connection, exposed the lead, tinned the end, put on heat shrink, and soldered it to the black plate voltage wire. I confirmed that the backplate was connected to the voltage supply, heated the heat shrink, and closed up the microphone for testing. I cringed looking back at this footage after understanding just how damaging smoke can be for a condenser capsule. I should have covered it with something first. However, this helped boost the output volume and reduce noise, but I wasn't done yet. I spotted 2 electrolytic capacitors on the circuit board, which are known to go bad and need replacing every 20 years or so. It turns out that this mic circuit is about 25 years old, which meant that I should replace the capacitors. Problem number 10. I ordered some with the same specs, but decided to replace the higher voltage electrolytic with a film capacitor instead, for better reliability and longevity. However, I did not check how large the film capacitor was going to be. So once again, I opened it up. Learning from my previous mistakes, I found a small plastic bag to put over the microphone's head, kinda like a hostage. Shout out to my girlfriend for gifting me these Dr. Octopus arms, they've been super helpful. I documented the orientation of the capacitors, which is very important. If they're wired the wrong way, they explode. And removed the XLR for easier access to the circuit board. I put on some flux and removed the old solder with a desoldering wick, and pulled its tooth out. I put in the new electrolytic, spread its legs, and soldered. I removed the second capacitor and tried to figure out how this giant film cap was going to fit. This seemed to work, but I made sure it would fit in the chassis. I then put a little heat shrink sleeve on the bent leg of the capacitor to avoid it touching the other components and causing a short circuit. I then soldered it in, snipped the leads, cleaned the flux, and attached the tube. And I'd like you to notice here that the purple wire is currently connected to the circuit. Here it is not. I did not know this, and I turned the mic on. Of course, I assumed it's the capacitors, so I began ripping them out and putting the old ones back in, and then I noticed it right about here. So I stripped the lead and solder it back on. Now you don't see the rest of that night because I didn't film it, but that essentially kept happening with two other connections where I would fix one connection and then another would come undone, and I was chasing my own tail for an hour before I finally had everything secure. Now at this point I have reduced the noise to an acceptable level for a tube mic, but because of the increased output level of the capsule with the plate voltage connected, it was driving the tube harder and getting a pretty colored sound. It sounded great, don't get me wrong, but I wanted a cleaner signal if I was going to add coloration in post. The original circuit came with a GE607 tube, which is a surprisingly good one, famous for its use in the AKG-C12 and its warm musical distortion. I intend to put it in a preamp and use it as a color box and put something a little cleaner in this mic.
Hello there, it's me from the future. I decided to go with a Sovtek 12AX7 tube, because it sounds really good. And so long as one of you guys in the comments don't let me know that I've done something terribly wrong, I think this microphone might just be done.
So there you have it, it's finally done. I'm over the moon about this thing. I think it sounds phenomenal, I think it looks great, and best of all, nobody else has this exact microphone. I decided to name it Frank because it's a Frankenstein mic, and because it was Frank Sinatra's favorite microphone. When people describe the U47 sound, they often use the words larger than life, and I think that's a very fitting description of this microphone's sound. It's got this velvety low end and a really nice proximity effect, and a very smooth top end. It's also one of those microphones that depending on the mix, I don't even have to touch with EQ. When I said that the U47 was always that missing puzzle piece in the vocal sound that I grew up on, this is the missing piece. My search is done. Which is crazy, because I feel like I'm always thinking about the next thing, like what could be better or what I don't have, but this is the end game. I'm done looking. This is my vocal mic. And right now I'm recording this through a Zoom recorder, so not a very good preamp in an untreated room. So now I'm going to show you some properly recorded samples so you guys can hear what it sounds like in a studio context. Let me know what you guys think, and thank you so much for watching. This was a really fun video to make. I know it's a little different from what I usually do, but I hope you enjoyed it. Alright, peace. Blue skies smiling at me. Nothing but blue skies do I see. Bluebirds singing a song. Nothing but bluebirds from now on. Never saw the sun shining so bright, never saw things going so right. Noticing the days hurrying by, when you're in love, my how they fly. Blue days, all of them gone. Nothing but blue skies from now on. Nothing but blue skies from now on.